Welcome to my Whisper Elise guide. In this video, I'll show you how to master this comp by going over the build, what items and augments to take, how to play before level 7, during level 7, then how to play after level 7, what you do if you get contested, and then we go into some in-depth positioning examples. This is a slow roll comp, meaning we're rolling down to 50 gold every single turn for 3-star units. We will be slow rolling at level 7 with this board. Here we're running 6 Whispers and Nico for 2 Shapeshifters. Nar can be another unit based on your augments, but we run him as he benefits from the Shapeshifter trait, and also because we want to play 3 Jade at level 8 by adding in Soraka. You will slow roll with this board until you hit at least 3-star, and once you do, level up to 8 and play Soraka for 3 Jades. You can play any other Jade unit until you hit her, but she is by far the best one. Personally, I have the most success with 6 Whispers, but going for a 4 Shapeshifter, 4 Whisper version also works. I'll talk more about how we can change our level 7 and 8 boards based on our augments, as well as what we add in at level 9 later in the video. Elise is our main carry, so we prioritize making items for her first. She has one core item, and that is QSS. This item is core for 2 reasons. Before she has shapeshifted, she is squishy, and if she gets CC'd and can't transform, then we will have a hard time winning any rounds. Secondly, with the giant amount of HP she gets from shapeshifter, the dodge chance makes her a lot more tanky. Initially, I didn't think this item was core on her since she drops aggro and can't be CC'd while in the air, but if you are getting resets on her spell often, you're winning those rounds regardless. So with QSS, we will take better losses, and we will also be better suited against tankier teams. The second and third items want to be Rageblade, BT, or Giant Slayer. You will pick 2 out of these 3. I think Rageblade is the most important, but in some cases if you get a lot of attack speed augments, you can drop it. BT is great for the giant shield, and also to heal her up. She only has 1 range after she transforms, so this will heal her up from a lot of splash damage. Giant Slayer scales incredibly well with the Whisper trait and Elise, as she deals both AP and AD, and the Giant Slayer is scaling off of both of those stats. This item also allows you to get through tanks, so that you can actually get resets onto Elise, and to avoid her getting stuck on tanks. Here are the final item builds for Elise. You can build Gunblade or Hodge if you need a healing item, and can't build BT. Note that the final build you go for depends on the augments you get and what you need in the current lobby. And if you are a master at positioning, you can get away with not running QSS, but you will get punished very often if you're not careful, so only do that if you are an experienced player. After we have itemized Elise, we want to itemize Siphon. You want to put utility, tank, and damage items on him. The whole goal is to make him act as a secondary carry, but also as a tank at the same time. The best items are Frozen Heart, Titans, BT, Sunfire, Giant Slayer, Hodge, or QSS. You make whichever ones you can out of those as long as you're not disrupting Elise items. We don't put other tank items on Siphon, as those want to go on Nico instead. Here we put standard ones like Stoneplate, Warmogs, Bramble, Declaw, and Redemption. If you get a Spatula, there are no good options. I know some of you might be thinking Dragonmancer Spat is good on Elise, but it's terrible. And even if you go with that route, you have to build a 6 Dragonmancer team around her. In other words, if you get a Spatula, just pray you get another one for that Tactician's Crown. The best augments to take for this comp are Big Friend, Celestial Blessing, Cybernetic Shell, Electrocharged, First Aid Kit, Jade Heart or Emblem, Second Wind, Shapeshifter, Thrall of the Hunt, Triforce, Whisper Heart or Emblem, Weak Spot, Ascension, Beast's Den, Jeweled Lotus, Portable Forge, Trade Sector, and Verdant Veil. I mentioned a lot of augments there, and the best ones out of those are Celestial Blessing, Shapeshifter Heart, Thrall of the Hunt, Ascension, Beast's Den, and Verdant Veil, so you can drop QSS on Elise. The reason why a lot of healing augments are so strong is because picking those is usually enough to drop BT on Elise, but if you have already made BT on Elise, then you don't want to go for those healing augments. There was a lot to remember in that segment, so if you want a cheat sheet of this comp or other comps I've made, they are available to patrons and YouTube members. Here is what the cheat sheet looks like for Corki, so you know what to expect for Elise as well. The carousel priority for this comp is Bow, Sword, Cloak, then Belt. From there, we can find some of the 2 and 3 cost units for this comp in the early game, and the ideal opener is to have Elise with Shapeshifters or Whispers. But that won't happen every game, so some other openers that also work are Warrior Bruisers, Nidalee with Shapeshifters, or Swiftchop Bruisers. Once we have our opener, we need to make items, but since Elise doesn't have flexible items, we need to be careful when making any items during the early game. You can definitely slam QSS, Rageblade, and BT. Giant Slayer can also be slammed, although you usually don't get value from this until stage 4. All these items use up Sword, Bow, Rod, Cloak, Glove. Therefore, we need to think twice before making an item out of those 5 components, as we do not want to make it hard to build Elise items later. Another note about the early game is that I like to pre-level to 4 on stage 1-4. This is so we can get access to 3 cost units in our shop already on stage 2-1. Finding an early Elise makes our game a lot easier. The goal with this comp is to be level 7 with 50 gold or more on stage 4-1. Therefore, we can play the early and mid game as if we were playing a standard fast 8 comp. In other words, the way I play the early game depends entirely on what opener I hit. From there, I can play for a loss streak or a win streak. And if you want to learn more about how to play the early game, check out my guide where I go in depth on that subject. After the Krugs round, you should have more direction towards a comp. The general requirements to play Whisper Elise is to have one component for QSS and another component for another Elise item. You also want to have some pieces of the level 7 comp on your board already, like Thresh, Gnar, Silas, or Elise, as it makes the mid-game transition easier. Much like the early game, we can play the mid-game aggressive or passive. If you're win streaking from Krugs, you can level to 6 on 3-2 and even level to 7 on 3-5. You can also roll at both of these stages to maintain the streak, but note that the goal is to be level 7 with 50 gold or more on stage 4-1, so don't dig too deep if you're rolling. If you are loss streaking, your strategy depends a little on how much HP and gold you have. If I'm loss streaking, what I try to do is to loss streak until stage 3-5, where I will level to 7 and then roll for the level 7 comp. If that is too expensive at that point, then just focus on saving HP until stage 4-1, where you will roll there instead. Once you are level 7 on stage 3-5 or 4-1, we ideally want to get up to 50 gold and start slow rolling. But first, we have to do a checkup on our HP. If we are low, typically 60 to 50 or lower, we need to roll down to stabilize. The goal is to hit this board with Elise 2-star, but sometimes you can get away with being weaker depending on how strong the other players are. Here you can also play other versions if you don't hit Siphon, like going for 4 Shapeshifters and 3 Jade, or even replacing him and Thresh with Shio Yu and Tarek if you hit them. But eventually, this board is the goal at level 7. Once you start slow rolling, your 3-star priority is pretty much just Elise. The other ones are just nice bonuses to get in this comp. Therefore, if you are hirelling and have a lot of gold, you can actually just skip to level 8 and then just roll for Elise 3-star there. The upside is that you have a higher chance of hitting Siphon and Nico 2-star at that level, and you also have decent odds of hitting Soraka. The major downside is that level 8 is relatively expensive, and the gold spent towards hitting level 8 is not gold spent on hitting 3-star Elise, and she is the biggest power spike for this comp. So only skip to level 8 if you're far ahead and have a lot of gold. You will slow roll until you hit 3-star Elise, and once you do, go to level 8. Sell the rest of the Thresh, Gnars, and Silases you have on the bench to hit level 8 faster, unless you only need 1 or 2 of them for the 3-star, because in that case, we can most likely hit the 3-stars at level 8. When you hit level 8, you will add in 3 Jades. Ideally, you add in Soraka, but Tarek will do fine until you hit her. You can also replace Thresh with Pyke once you hit him for a bit of extra damage if needed. There isn't much to change about the level 8 board, unless we have some emblems or hearts from Augments. If we get +1 Shapeshifters, we stick to this board. If we get +1 Whisper, we cut Thresh and add in Swain for 4 Shapeshifters. If we get +1 Jade, we take out Soraka and play Swain for 4 Shapeshifters until we hit Soraka 2-star. We can also cut Silas and Thresh to play 4 Shapeshifters and add in a legendary like Bard for more utility. If you get to level 9, you add in 4 Shapeshifters with Swain. If not, you can also add in Bard for more utility. If you get contested, what you do depends a little on how you get contested. You can get contested by somebody else playing the same comp, or you can get partially contested by somebody else playing Elise, Siphon, and Nico in other comps. If you get partially contested, you need to see what comp the other person is playing. A lot of the time, they will just be using a 2-star version of Elise, Siphon, or Nico. In that case, we are in a less favorable position, but we can definitely still hit everything we need. Elise is usually just a synergy bot if she's played, so if you see them start to slam items on her, then you need to pay attention to their board. If they're picking up more Elises than they need for the 2-star, then we're in trouble, as now we're getting full contested. If that is the case, things aren't as bad as they seem. You have 2 options from there though. The first one is to use Elise as an item carrier and then pivot into another comp. The best one to transition into is Bruiser Siphon, Cava Legends, or even Guild Zaya. The second option is to contest, but if you're doing this, you want to go straight to level 8 and then try to hit Elise 3-star there, as you want to focus more on hitting your Siphon items and your Nico items, as you are most likely not hitting Elise 3-star that game. But you can also roll for Elise 3-star at level 7, but to do that, you need to be farther ahead than your contester, and you also need to constantly be checking how close the other player is to hitting Elise 3-star, because if they're starting to get close, You have to roll down in order to hit before them. Before we go into general and in-depth positioning, we need to talk about the important units we're running. Elise is quite squishy until she has shapeshifted, so we need to protect her until then. Her spell makes her deal damage, and if she gets a kill with it, it resets her spell. We want this to happen because it makes her drop aggro by jumping into the air, and we also want this to happen as she will deal more damage overall this way. Therefore, we generally want to position her to attack weaker tanks at the start of every fight. Siphon charges to the farthest away within 2 hexes, and he bites a random unit within range after he's dashed. It's important for him to dash into the backline to ult the enemy carries in this comp. The spell is complicated, and I've talked extensively about how to position Siphon in my Brewster Siphon guide, so check that out if you want to learn more. Nico's passive makes her get more HP depending on who she is next to. We want that to go onto Siphon most of the time, as he will have the most HP. But don't get ultra greedy with this, as positioning Elise and Siphon will be more important than getting some extra HP on the Nico. Thresh targets the farthest away champion, so we put him on the right or left side depending on where the carries are. With that said, let's move on to general positioning, which looks like this. We want to maximize value from the Jade statue if possible, but against some comps we will not be able to do that. So make sure that at least Elise is next to it, to give her more attack speed and healing. Having Nico and Siphon next to it is also great if possible. Silas is a bit off to the left to leave space for Elise to walk up after she ults, and also so that Nico's passive goes on Siphon. Thresh is in the backline on either side. Soraka wants to be in the middle to make sure that she ults. Nico generally wants to be in the middle to protect as much of our team as possible, but more importantly, she wants to be next to where Elise walks up. Gnar wants to be positioned next to big clumps of enemies to stun as many of them as possible. Now let's move on to some in-depth positioning examples. Against the first guy, the big threat is Ao Shin. Siphon is positioned to dash into the backline, Nico is stunning the front line, Elise will walk up next to the Nico to stay safe, Gnar will stun the enemy Silas, and our Silas is positioned to tank for the Siphon to make sure he stays alive longer. Against the second guy, the big threat is Varus. Silas is tanking the Varus to keep Siphon alive, Nico is stunning the entire enemy frontline, Elise is walking up to the other side of the swift shots to stay safe, Thresh is hooking the Varus. Siphon will dash to the enemy Silas, and with his next ult, he will hopefully dash to the enemy backline. Against the third guy, the big threat is Corki. It's hard for us to get through a solo frontline Idas with Elise, and we have to be careful when clumping against Cannoneers as well. Therefore, we have to split up a little. Soraka is baiting out the Sona ult to not hit Elise, Thresh is hooking the Corki, we are funneling our Siphon into the backline by making the walk to Idas longer than the walk to the backline. Getting Siphon into the backline is the way you win this matchup, especially if you don't have Giant Slayer on Elise. We lose that on Jade value for a lot of units here, but in this matchup it's worth it as we won't get shredded by the Cannoneers, and we also get to sneak Siphon into the backline this way. Thank you so much for watching. If you learned something, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. If you want a cheat sheet for this comp or other ones, consider becoming a patron or a YouTube member. And if you want to get better at TFT, join the Discord. We got over 9,000 other players there who are hungry to climb. And if you want to get coached by me, the information is over on the Discord server as well. So take care and see you in the next video.